just admit more people into the meeting, and then we will start. Thank you. Good morning and a warm welcome to all colleagues who are joining the outreach today. Let me start by saying all protocol observed. From the Rhodes University, we want to acknowledge and welcome Ms. Nomangwane Mkhwetyana, who is from the director in the Division for Communication Advancement at the Rhodes University. I would like to welcome and acknowledge deans, senior management, and lecturers, as well as students from the university that are joining us today, from the Faculty of Commerce and other faculties, if they're joining us as well. From National Treasury, we would like to welcome Deputy Director General for International and Regional Economic Policy, Ms. Vuyelwa Vumendlini, who is accompanied by a few officials from the department, particularly from the Budget Office. Just briefly, the International and Regional Economic Policy Division, or IREP, as we call it at the department, is mainly responsible for the management of Treasury's international engagements on behalf of the South African government. This includes managing relationships with international and regional financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is the OECD, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, as well as the New Development Bank, to name but a few. And just as a way of background, the budget outreaches are held after the tabling of the budget in February, and with the main aim of unpacking the budget to various stakeholders, as well as engaging on the budget. So as much as National Treasury officials will deliver a presentation to all the attendees today, we're hoping that colleagues will be engaging, and that will help us take away key inputs from this session, which will be put to very good use in future. So on today's program, we will have Ms. Mkhwetyana, who will be making a few opening remarks before we hand over to Ms. Vumendlini for the presentation, the budget presentation. We will then go to a Q&A session, and we hope for a very interactive session with colleagues who are attending today. We will also have a presentation on Vulekamali. For those who might be hearing about this for the first time, Vulekamali is a partnership between Treasury and civil society and is an easily accessible online budget data portal where South Africans can access budget data in a friendly and easy to use manner. It is also a very interactive portal, which we're hoping that after the meeting, colleagues will go and interact with that portal. One of my colleagues, Ms. Prudence Cele, will elaborate on the portal later on in the program. So without wasting any more time, I will hand over to Ms. Mkhwetyana to make the opening remarks. Thank you.
David, if we can please ask for you to switch off your video. Thank you, Mr. Mkhwetyana.
Okay. Can you hear me? Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. As introduced, I'm Nomangwane Mkhwetyana. I'm the Director of Student Affairs at Rhodes University. Let me start by saying all protocol observed. It is a great honor for me to welcome the National Treasury's team to Rhodes University, as well as all the other participants that are part of this engagement today. A very warm welcome to the Rhodes University community and our students as well. Let me start by saying this engagement has been taking place for the past few years. But as we are all aware, because of COVID-19, we had to kind of put things on hold. And it is my pleasure this morning to thank you for bringing it back to Rhodes University. There are 26 universities in South Africa, and you could have chosen any of them, but you chose Rhodes University. We do not take that lightly. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for choosing our students to unpack and engage them in the 2021 budget. The engagement plays an integral part in the development of our students as active citizens of the country. It affords them an opportunity to participate in the political, social, and economic affairs of our country. This in turn prepares them to be active citizens in the building of a successful country. Once more, without further ado, I just want to again allude to the fact that we really appreciate and we thank you for bringing back the event to Rhodes University. And on behalf of Rhodes University, I wish you well in your engagement with our students. Have a good day further. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that for those opening remarks, Ms. Mkhwetyana. Without wasting any more time, let me move on to our presenter for the day, Ms. Vumendlini. Over to you.
David, if I could please ask for you to switch off your video, thank you. And Ms. Mkhwetyana, thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Mkhwetyana, students, and everybody that has attended this session today. I am Vuyelwa Vumendlini, the DDG responsible for international and economic and regional economic policy. I'll be taking you through the presentation today that we're doing to all the universities and what the budget 2021 is all about. So if you just give me a moment to load my presentation, please. I trust I'm audible to everyone.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
You. See. Okay. You have the presentation. All right. Thank you very much. Let me begin. Okay. As you know, the budget policy statement by the government, particularly the governing party, through which choices are made about competing priorities. Firstly, to bring out stability, allocate efficiency, value for money, also importantly, provision of service delivery. What happens during the budget process is that departments will submit the estimate of expenditure to the MTF on the strategic plans by government, MP, as well as the medium-term strategic framework. These are what the departments will use to put together their estimates of expenditure that will enable them to achieve those priorities as tabled in the two documents that I have spoken about. Then the National Treasury engages with departments through the functional groups. All of these outcomes from these engagements will then become inputs to the MTech program. The MTech is then the one that will be making recommendations to the Ministers' Committee on the Budget, who then advise the Minister of Finance on the recommendations, and these are then tabled to Cabinet. That's just the rundown of the budget. However, the budget is based on policy priorities, as I have mentioned. So you will have the medium-term budget policy statement, which is what we call the mini budget, that is tabled in October of every year. This one then will highlight all the key government priorities, the fiscal framework, revision of revenue, as well as the adjustments expenditure framework, which would be during the course of the year, how if there has been any variances in terms of what particularly around priorities and adjustments need to be made. This will also be tabled during the medium-term budget policy statement in October, and this is governed by Section 31 and 2 of the PFMA. Allocation letters after the MTBPS are then distributed to departments, and thereafter budget documents are prepared and tabled. You will have your budget review, the budget statement, estimates of national expenditure. Those will be the big documents that normally the Minister of Finance will say at the beginning of the budget speech, when he will say, "Madam Speaker, I then table these budget documents for the adoption by the House." Now let's talk about budget 2021 in particular. So this budget 21 was framed around two policy objectives, which were highlighted in the 2020 MTBPS, as I've mentioned, because that is where the policy directive of government is pronounced by Minister at the time. And the 2020 MTBPS highlighted promoting economic recovery as well as returning public finances to a sustainable position. As many of you are aware that the budget deficit has been increasing over time, and as well as the debt to GDP rate. Now we need to get the public finances to sustainable levels, because we owe a lot of people a lot of money as government, and government needs to be in a situation where we are always able to service our debt and pay it back at the time that is agreed to. Right now, what has been the main priority of government, again, based on the policy frameworks, has been to return to rapid economic growth, given the lockdown, COVID-19 lockdown implications, what it has cost the economy, the mass vaccination program, which will be free of charge, where we are hoping to get herd immunity, preferably by the end of this year, or at the absolute latest beginning of next year, will allow us to reopen the economy in such a way that we can then see a GDP growth of about 3.3%, as what has been projected in the 2021 budget. The budget deficit, as it currently stands, it is estimated to be 14% of GDP for this particular year, but we are hoping by 2023, 2024, we would have arrested this budget deficit in such a way that it could narrow to about 6.3% of GDP. Tax revenues, whilst they were higher than what was projected in 2020, but they were still lower than what was projected in the 2020 budget. So up for about 213 billion, give or take. Therefore, there were tax measures that the minister had pronounced during the MTBPS, of which the details were to be unpacked during the 2021 budget. They totaled about 40 billion rands, and all of these have been withdrawn. The 2021 budget consolidated spending is about 2 trillion rands. And of which more than half of it has been allocated to learning and culture, health and social development, and I'll unpack these later on in my presentation. The debt service costs, however, sitting at about 269 billion, or 13.4% of the budget, is now is in the top 3 expenditures that are increasing at alarming rate when you look at our budget, and I will show you that again later on in the presentation. This admitting of people is costing me a bit. Oh dear, let me just go back. The lobby is disturbing me a bit. Sorry about that. So, okay. Moving back to the rising debt service cost, as I said, is one of the fastest rising expenditures now in the budget, in the top 3, and I will explain how later on in the presentation. And then over the TF period, after budgeting for debt service costs and the contingent liability, 48.7% of the budget is being distributed to national departments, 41.9% to provinces, and 9.4% to local government. What would it take for South Africa to reach that higher growth that is inclusive, provides access to services such as electricity, water and sanitation, and so forth? That will be the structural reforms that the Minister of Finance has been talking about, even previous ministers of finance, that we need to embark on structural reforms for us to be able to unlock the growth in the economy. These are the global estimates of global growth in the wake of the vaccine rollout and stimulus packages. You will see that because of the COVID pandemic, the world economy was estimated to contract by about 3.5%, with the advanced economies taking the biggest knock from this contraction. But growth has since improved in terms of the outlook. However, this outlook remains fragile, and it is uneven within the countries, and again amongst countries, regions, and so forth. But we are expecting quite a robust recovery of about 5.5% this year. This has been estimated by the IMF. On the domestic economic outlook, looking at South Africa, we are estimating that in fact, it's now actual 2020, where growth contracted by 7% in South Africa, but we are estimating that this year, albeit that it will be coming from a low base, that our growth will increase to about 3.3% this year, 2.2 next year, and 1.6 the following year. This is all dependent on the successful vaccine rollout that government is embarking on, as well as the structural reforms. Mainstream economy, including the informal economy as well, you need to get people to be productive. There is support for industrial growth with lots of sectors where there has been some investments that have been tabled to improve the growth in those particular sectors in South Africa. Infrastructure rollout with the infrastructure fund that was tabled again couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and implemented. And as well as creating an enabling business environment. There's the BIS portal platform. 125 new companies have been registered. Now, this is making ease of business to be able to make it easier for you to register your business online. And Transnet is working really hard to ease congestion at the Port of Durban to enable our trade in at that port. There's also Operation Vulindlela, spearheaded by the presidency and the National Treasury. And again, the reforms that are under Operation Vulindlela are the reforms that have been on budgets on the program of National Treasury for quite a while. The structural reforms that needs to be implemented for us to be able to unlock the economy. And I mean, amongst others, if you recall, there used to be a 14-point plan of how to invigorate growth, and this is part of Operation Vulindlela. And Vulindlela is a sort of operation where the people who are managing it are given the authority to unlock everywhere where there are blockages for something that has not been implemented, that should have been implemented. They must unlock that. They must open all of those doors that are there. And I will mention but a few of what is in Operation Vulindlela. The fast tracking of the procurement of additional electricity. As I said, as a result, there's been a request for proposals on the IPP program. We need to be releasing the spectrum, and this will be done fairly soon. Finalizing the rollout of the 5G infrastructure, expanding the electronic visa system and waivers in order to support tourism, reviewing regulatory skills. How can we import scarce skills in the country without going through too much red tape? Finalizing the white paper on the national rail policy, as well as the commuter rail services. Again, corporatizing the National Ports Authority and reviving the Green Drop and the Blue Drop program. These are some of the measures. With regards to the fiscal strategy of the 2021 budget, as I've mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, I did say that the budget tries to immediately support the economy to recovery because of the pandemic that is there, as well as containing the large budget deficit. So in that way, we need to stabilize the debt to GDP ratio. By primarily, that can be achieved by controlling non-interest expenditure growth. We need to support the economy as well as the public health services in the wake of the pandemic, but without necessarily adding to long-term spending pressures. And again, we need to improve the composition of spending by reducing growth in compensation, but rather protecting capital investment going forward. Efforts to reduce the growth in the public service wage bill remain on course. Last year, government did win the court case against Labour to keep the salaries of the public servants as they were and not implement the 2018 wage agreement as what the labor unions were demanding at the time due to spending pressures. However, this fiscal strategy has some risks attached to it. And the important risk is that the global outlook remains uncertain. As I said, this global recovery is really premised or based on the successful rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. And if the rollout is only at advanced economies and low-income countries are not able to get it at the same speed as advanced economies, we will never be able to arrest the pandemic. So everyone will be at risk. So the successful rollout of that, doing away with vaccine nationalization and so forth, really bears a lot in terms of our economic recovery and therefore our fiscal strategy being where we want it to be. Several of our state-owned companies are requesting additional funding, and because of financial mismanagement, they have found themselves in these situations. However, some of them are really systematically important in a way that they do require financing to be able to operate. And again, the last significant risk is the new public service wage bill. May be aware that government has already tabled a government offer in the PSCBC as to how the cost of living adjustment should be going forward. Again, keeping in mind that there is still the 2018 salary agreement that is still under dispute. Looking at South Africa's fiscal position in global context, you will see that the debt service costs, as I said, that they are increasing at an alarming rate. Right now, they are averaging about 20.9% of gross tax revenue. I mean, what this is that for every rand in taxes that government collects, 20.9 cents of it goes towards servicing our debt. That leaves a very, very little on the part of government to work and service things such as education, health, and so forth. Comparing this figure with our peers, you will see that we are twice as large as the median of our peers, that is other developing and emerging market economies. And again, our budget deficit is about seven. No, what I mean was that the government's borrowing remains again very large, where budget deficit is averaging at about 7.7%. As I've mentioned, that for this particular year is projected to be about 15 or so percent, and then it will taper down in 23-24 to about 6.3, but the average of it is 7.7%, which is quite high when you compare it with our peers, that is other emerging market economies as well as developing countries. Changes in the tax revenue, as I did say, that during the 2020 MTBPS in October and compared to the 2021 budget in February, the shortfall was not as bad as it was then, and hence the tax measures of about 40 billion rands were then withdrawn. However, there has been some upward revisions again with regards to this that had to do with the personal income tax, corporate income tax, and other excess duties. So and again, those tax measures were over the MTBPS period, which is the 3 years. It would have been 5 years this year, 5 billion this year, 10 billion next year, and then 15 billion thereafter. All of these have been withdrawn. With regards to tax proposals, what has happened was that the budget, the personal income tax brackets have been increased by higher than the inflation adjustment, and again the expected loss in revenue from all the measures that I have already spoken about are largely going to be offset by excise taxes or sin taxes, if you would want to call it that way. When you look at the main changes on the non-interest expenditure, is that that is the part that we want to control the most, such that we can be able to get to the targeted budget deficit of about 6.2023-24, or is it 24-25? Forget the, I think it's 23-24, yes, where we want to get to. So the non-interest expenditure is what we need to control. However, the main changes that have been there has been including the COVID-19 response, and I'll get more to it later on in the presentation. About 10 billion has been set up for the 3 years, the vaccines in particular. There's been public employment initiatives that have been put forth, the recapitalization of the land bank, as well as the modernization of the SARS system. So again, what has happened during the COVID-19 period, government has been trying to support low-income households, as well as funding the health policy to be able to contain the pandemic. The social relief distress grant has been extended by another 3 months, as well as the UIF relief scheme that has also been extended. As I mentioned, that there's been about 10 billion provided for the vaccine rollout. However, importantly is that the contingent reserve has increased because there is vaccination campaign costs. So it's important that should anything change the budget to do so. As you would know, every single South African will get the vaccine free of charge. As I did mention, again, that what we are trying to do is to narrow the deficit going forward. and the target date would be about year 2023-24, after the spike that we experienced in non-interest expenditure, largely as a result of the pandemic and the response measures that government had put forth to support households and businesses during this pandemic. And if all goes according to plan, our gross debt to GDP will stabilize at about 88.9% in 2025-2026. Looking at the slide, you will see that what was projected during the MTBPS was much higher. We were projecting about 95.3% at the time. So the improvements in the revenue or taxes that have been collected has allowed us to project it at this lower rate, as well as a expected or recovery. As I did mention as well, that we are projecting that the budget deficit will narrow over the medium term to about 6 by 2023-24, and the average for the entire 3 years is about 7.7%. The infrastructure fund has received a support of about 18 billion rands. And as you know, with the infrastructure fund, this is supposed to be a joint venture between government and the private sector. So we are hoping that with the money that has been provided for in the MTBPS, it will be sufficient or large enough to attract private sector investment into this. The slide then will show that, as I said, that we need to be controlling non-interest expenditure, but at the same time, where according to the budget has growth been the highest is on rent on land, capital transfers, capital payments, expecting the compensation of employees to narrow and not grow at an alarming rate, right now at about 1.2%. This, of course, with the proviso that the current wage agreement or the measures that have been put to contain the wage increases remain as such, and but there will be, of course, a decline in the current transfers due to the COVID-19 pandemic. At the beginning of the presentation, I did mention that over half of expenditure will go towards learning and culture, social development, debt service costs, and health. And again, debt service costs, as I've mentioned, at 916 billion, take over 20.9% of the of actual spending, which is quite high. So they are the third largest expenditure of government after learning and culture and social development. With regards to the division of revenue, after the debt service cost and the contingent reserve, as I've mentioned again, that 48.7% funds have been allocated nationally, 41.9% to provinces, and 9.4% to municipalities. The risks to the fiscal framework, I have already mentioned some at the beginning of the presentation. But currently, as what are those? is really the new waves of COVID-19 infection. So the successful rollout of the vaccine will go a long way in assisting us so that there's minimal economic disruptions as a result of these new waves of COVID-19. Again, I've also mentioned that the compensation budget poses quite a risk. So if the budget ceilings remain as such, then we will achieve the fiscal framework. But if anything changes or the new wage agreement becomes unaffordable, it will definitely compromise debt stabilization. Again, our public entities, local government, SOEs, as I did mention, that some of them are really in a bad situation because of poor financial management, and that needs to be dealt with. And again, as I've mentioned, the state-owned enterprises as well, which are not in a good shape as well at all. So Minister of Finance spoke quite a bit during the budget as well as GPS about implementing the user pay principle. People need to pay for services that they use, because if we do not do that, it will put a lot of pressure on public finances to the extent that it will not be sustainable going forward. So to conclude, the 2021 budget really strives with a balance between igniting the economy, controlling public finances, extending the budget support in light of COVID-19, really controlling again the budget deficit, as well as constraining non-interest expenditure. So it really does strive to come up with that sort of balance, which is quite difficult. You grow the economy, but at the same time, you try by all means that the public finances are on a good trajectory, which, by the way, as you are aware, that they have not been on a good footing for quite some time. So in that regard, we do need to get them to sustainable position, and structural reforms are key towards this happening, as well as economic growth. We, again, need to control the compensation bill, and engagements with labor, which are ongoing. We're hoping that they will derive good results for us to be able to achieve this. And again, as I've mentioned, again, the significant risks in relation to the economy and the fiscal outlook. And for now, the COVID-19 pandemic poses the highest risk. So thank you very much, and we are open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vuyelwa, for that in-depth presentation. I think minds are stimulated, and we have colleagues that are now ready and willing to engage. If I may just indicate, colleagues, if you have questions, please do feel free to use the raise hand option or function on Microsoft Teams, and you're also welcome to type the question on the chat box. Can I please also request all colleagues to switch the videos off? Thank you. Vuyelwa is joined by colleagues from the Treasury, as I indicated earlier. We do have Mr. Keta Dlamini, we have Mr. Nikoli Kete, and we also have Mr. Sibusiso Gumbi, who are also accompanying Vuyelwa. I think we can go ahead to the first question. which came from Gavin Keaton. Sorry, may I please request Mr. David S. to switch off your video? Thank you very much. Going back to the question, we have a question from Gavin Keaton, who says, for the 100 billion rand increase in revenue above what the MTBPS estimated, is the economy stronger than expected, or is SARS under the new leadership becoming more efficient again? I will hand over to Vuyelwa and the colleagues from Treasury to respond to that, while other colleagues are either typing in their questions in the chat box or also just using the raise hand function. Thank you.
Keta, could you kindly respond to the question, please, on the higher than expected revenue numbers? Thank you.
Am I audible?
Now you are, thank you.
All right. So yes, I think the questioner is correct that we've revised up the economic growth outlook. There was also overperformance in certain tax categories, particularly corporate income taxes, as a result of stronger performance in particularly the commodity sectors. And so that has led to a revision in the in-year tax out 2020-21. Nevertheless, I think we're still emphasizing the fact that we are experiencing quite a significant shortfall over the medium term compared to the budget before the COVID-19 pandemic. So in the budget, we highlight the fact that we're still expecting a 213 billion rand shortfall compared to the 2020 budget in the MTBPS, but it is still a significant shortfall. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Keta. I do not see any other hands in the meantime, and we also don't see anything else in the chat box. Maybe while colleagues still recollect their thoughts or think or what else to ask from that very in-depth presentation, I can hand over to our colleague, Ms. Prudence Cele from the Budget Office, who will elaborate more on Vuleka Mali, which is the online portal which we introduced at the beginning of the program. Over to you, Prudence. Thank you. Prudence, you seem to be on mute. Please unmute.
Sorry about that. My name is Prudence Cele, and I'm from the Budget Reform Unit in the Budget Office, responsible for budget reforms as it relates to the budget. And I will be taking you through the Vuleka Mali portal, an online budget portal that was introduced in 2018. And I will share my screen now. Okay. All right, so why are we having this discussion about an online portal? As colleagues will know, South Africa's commitment to transparency is entrenched in our constitution, and we find it in section 32 of the constitution, which states that everyone has a right to access on information by the state, held by the state, and there is a legislation that affects that, which is the Public Access to Information Act, PAIA. And moreover, as the South African government, we are founding members of the Open Government Partnership, which aims mainly to promote open governance, harness technologies that strengthen governance, and obviously empower the citizens with information. And also, as the National Treasury, we are part of a network, global initiative on fiscal transparency, and it is mainly a network of finance ministries sharing transparency tools and information. Why did we decide to then move from just publishing information that we currently have on the on the website? The National Treasury or South African government is joined first with New Zealand in the 2019 Open Budget Index, and they are since the start of the OBI survey. So what is this OBI? It's the world's only independent comparative measure on budget transparencies throughout all the governments that participate. So we realized that even though we have a wealth of information on our website, we are not using it as the public. So citizens who do not understand budget lingo do not use the data as we would like them to have used it before. So it necessitates that we have a different approach to how we do budget transparency and the sharing of information. With that, we decided to have a partnership, form a partnership with civil society organizations that are very active in the fiscal space and who have asked questions and asked for information with regard to budgeting. And so the spin-off from us engaging them was not only them giving us the specifications of the type of data they wanted, but then it forced them to organize themselves. They formed a coalition called Imali Yetu. Imali Yetu consisted of some of the civil society organizations on the screen, which is Section 27, Right to Know, Mobisem, and SPY, and PSEM as well. So they formed a coalition just to be able to have one voice, because we do not want to engage civil society when somebody else wants this and another person wants something different and it's contradictory. So that was a positive spin-off from our engagement with civil society, and we formed a coalition, and the coalition then became a formal partnership with the National Treasury in the development of the online portal. The portal, as Ntsagisi, mainly intended to be an empowerment tool for the participants or the users of the portal. So it is meant to give you access to information in a different format to what you've always had and seen budget being presented. So it was launched in February 2018 after the budget in Parliament. And in the portal, we have information that has basically empowering you through budget literacy videos. So we have a video that explains what Ms. Viola just went through about what the budget process constitutes of, the kind of platforms we have and how the engagement happens. So we have a video on that. We have a video on procurement systems and how you can get to learn more about how budgeting is done and how the portal can assist you as well. So there's a number of videos there that help people who don't understand how the budget works. In addition, we also have a platform for contributed data. So if you are a civil society or journalist, or you are somebody who is interested in analyzing budgets, you can be able to do your own analysis and your interpretation of the data. The data is mainly coming in XLSV, X, and XLSX, and CSV as well. So it's different formats of presenting the data, because we've been criticized previously that we only give information in PDF format. And so leaving no room for any other interpretation or analysis, because I will show you the graph that I think I think makes sense, but then somebody else might want to have a different perspective on the data. So the structured data there, we have infrastructure data, which gives you locations of different projects in the different provinces and municipalities as well. And then we have procurement guides, which show you the different steps of procurement. I will show you now what that looks like. Okay. So when you go to vulekamali.gov.za, the homepage will look something like this. You are able to search whatever information you're looking for. You can search for a certain sector of interest to you. You can go down. If you're not a person who is looking for a specific thing, you can just do a glance at what our budget looks like. For example, you will see the consolidated budget here. This is something you'd usually see in our summary of the budget in the budget review. So here you see it in a graphic format. You are able to see the amounts, and you can see that learning and culture is the presentation we already went through, illustrated. Learning and culture, which includes education as well. It takes a bulk of the budget. So if you don't understand budget lingo, we're assuming this will still make sense to you. In addition, we have provincial data as well. And in the different provinces, you'll be able to see the different departments that are represented in a particular province. And you'll see that Gauteng will take the bulk, as well as KwaZulu-Natal. And then you'll come to Western Cape, you'll see that the smallest one is the community and safety budget, and so on and so forth. So this portal is meant to give you various formats of we currently have. So in addition to that, if you don't want to see the summaries, you want more details, then you can come to the particular financial year you're looking for, and then you will see departments here, and then you can select any of the departments that you are interested in. It will take you to a page that specifically focuses on that department's budget. You will see that the Department of Police also have a website, the link to their website, and it summarizes why they exist. Something that we previously had in what we call the estimates of national expenditure, the documentation itself. So now you'll have the summary there, and you can also download the E&E in a PDF format, and you can see the tables in Excel here. You can download them and analyze them at your own leisure, but at the same time, we have provided a downloadable image of what the particular program in police looks like. So you'll see that visible policing is what we spend the most funding on the votes allocation on, and also you will go down and you'll be able to see what we call economic classifications. These are things that are already in the Excel sheet, just presented differently. So you'll know that police, obviously, it needs manpower. So you will see salaries and wages will be taking up the bulk of the economic classifications there. In addition, we have what we call infrastructure, locations and data. This will include your public-private partnerships as well. It still needs to be updated, but it is information that tells you at what stage the project is, what sector it is focusing on, the budget on that particular project, and also, I'll go back. You can also see and view spatial planning information by location. So you are able to click on a map that will show you, for example, the population, and it show you the equitable share by provinces and how much is gonna be allocated to which province, and rand 1,000. So you'll see when you hover around it in that format that you can see how much of the equitable share is allocated to where. And you are also able to see information. Come here. And now you are able to see SASSA pay points on the map within your own vicinity, in your own province, in your own location. So these are some of the things that we have on the portal. I will go on the landing page. I already mentioned that we have videos. So what is the budget? What is an online portal? How important is it that you understand the budget process? How do you participate in the budget process? What are the legislations that enable you to participate in Parliament, for example? How do you, if you want to register a company, how do I get to understand procurement data? So some of the information that is shared on the landing page. And we also have all the information that you currently have on the Treasury website, your budget highlights, the bills, the speeches. And in addition to that, we've also added the procurement guide. So this one basically tries to outline in a written format what are the different stages of procurement. And we know that some universities have been using this in their own courses as well. So these are some of the resources that we have on the portal, and we are inviting you to use it yourself and get to understand what kind of information we have. And as I said, it's because it was created because we did not know what the people wanted to see. So it is meant to meet the needs of the citizens, because there is no point having been recognized internationally as a transparent nation when the nation itself does not use the data. So thank you so much. I will stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Prudence. And hopefully once we have colleagues attending, we'll be able to go and interact with this very informative budget portal. Prudence, if I could just ask you to switch your video off. Thank you so much. Colleagues, if there are any questions, we will welcome those. You can either type them into the chat box, or you can use the raise hand function, and then we will be able to come to you. I am not seeing any hands, and I'm also not seeing any questions on the chat box. Hopefully that means colleagues have understood both the presentations and have interacted very well with them. I think without wasting any more time, I can just check if Ms. Hwekana has got any closing remarks to make before we bring the session to an official close, or to also just check if any Treasury colleagues have got any additional comments. Thank you. Mangwane, are you still in the meeting with us?
Hindsa,
Yes, you know.
I think she had other engagements. I do not see her in the list of my participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sino. There is just one comment in the chat box which says the portal is impressive. Looking forward to exploring it further. Thank you so much for that positive feedback, and please do engage with it. It really is a portal to give you access to plenty of data in an easily understandable and accessible manner. I think without any more comments, we would like to bring this meeting to a close by thanking everyone that made time to participate and also form part of this budget outreach. We hope you do take away at least something from this session. Also thanking the colleagues from the National Treasury, which delegation was led by the DDG for IREP, Ms. Vuyelwa Vumentlini, and to also thank the colleagues that attended from Rhodes University. That would be, deans, senior management, lecturers, as well as all the students. So thank you very much, and we bring the meeting to a close. Enjoy the rest of your day further, and stay safe.
Thank you, Nzagisi. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. Bye.